welcome to this week's episode of Level Up Cyber. My name is Tony Bryan, your host and Executive Director of CyberUp. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a little while because it is an important topic that I think it's, discussed in periphery ways, I think in multiple circles, but I've never really seen a deep dive into the topic of where to start, where to go. But we're going to really lean into the idea of mentorship and the important role that mentors play as you're either in your career or trying to get into your career within cybersecurity. So really looking forward to the discussion with today's guest. She's got a ton of experience around just mentorship. In fact, is even building out chapters around this, in other countries to kind of help build up mentorship programs. So very excited to welcome Jennifer Cox, the director for Ireland's newest chapter, Women in Cybersecurity, WISIS. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks, Tony. It's really nice to meet you. And I guess let me share a little bit about me and my background, because it's always been a little bit colorful. And I love to tell it because I think a lot of people come into cybersecurity through the traditional route. You go to college, you study whatever it is that you need to study, you come out, you enter the career, and then move on from there. And I haven't done any of that. And I always like to share it for those who have not had the traditional route as such. My background in study is in theatre studies and stage production. And then I did some degree work in psychology as well. So nothing to do with tech or cybersecurity at all. But I took a role in a tech company nearly 20 years ago now on like a reception, logging cases into a support queue. And I kind of got the hang of answering the questions as they came through. So any support team anywhere is super, super busy. As the questions came through, I would start answering them rather than push them to the support team because it was to help them. Then I was closing more cases than most people in the support team. So I got a job there, moved up through the ranks there to support center supervisor and then IT coordinator. So after 11 years, I was looking after everything across the network, from setting up new users to rolling out new software, maintaining and deploying new systems. And then I wanted to get into cybersecurity, which I'm sure we hear a lot from lots of different people that want to join it now. How do I do it? I've never done it before in the past. What do I need to do it? And in my case, because I didn't have degree work or studies in cybersecurity, that was a blocker for me. But in Ireland, at least, if you haven't got the degree, then 10 years of work experience will bypass that degree need in many cases, even in public service. So I was in my 11th year with that company when I chose to go into cybersecurity, and I took a leap of faith and went back to frontline support and joined Tenable, which they were at the time brand new to Ireland. I joined their support team, and in my almost 9 years with Tenable, I was promoted 7 times. And in my final role, then I was a security engineering manager, managing teams across the globe. That helped our customers with best practices around cybersecurity. So much for a super short intro, but I always like to tell that just so that people who don't follow the traditional route know that there's other ways into it too.
You said something here so is that just and this is off topic, but it just kind of struck as a question. So is it generally just accepted best practices that you get 10 years of experience across all of Ireland? That is equivalent of a degree? Is that just a cultural norm across the country?
It seems to be. I didn't know until I was about 9 years into it, and that was the case, because around about 9 years I had wanted to make the move, and I was having a look at what I could possibly do, and I couldn't. No, there were places that wouldn't entertain you at all without the degree to do it. But then I started to understand that they would say degree or relevant experience. Now, yes, Ireland is possibly an EU thing. I don't know. I was only applying in Ireland at the time, but I guess the best marker for those kind of things is when you apply for like government public service positions. Then that's where the literal rules are as such, and they had it in their rules, so that tends to sort of trickle out across the rest of the industry from there. And it's a lot easier, not easier, that's the wrong word to use. It's a lot simpler now. There tends to be less of it. It's not a 10-year requirement. It might be maybe 5 years, and I think that's purely down to the specific industry, because 10 years of experience in tech is one thing. 10 years of experience in cybersecurity is something else different. Like anything from maybe 5 years and older, is it really as relevant anymore? I was talking to somebody this morning about how I used to work in merchant services back when the chip and pin was being introduced onto cards. Now, for some people, they probably don't ever remember that there was a time where there wasn't a chip and pin on a bank card or on a credit card. But things have changed, so it's been so transformative in that space of time that those things aren't necessarily relevant anymore. But if you're in cybersecurity, your skills are going to change at least within every 2 years. You're going to have learned something new and significant, be it a certification or a new type of technology. So telling somebody that they need 10 years of experience in that, you're really telling them that at least 5 of those years are probably redundant and the rest of them are much more relevant to the actual job you're going to do day in, day out. So.
I love the idea. I mean, we advocate quite a bit for skills-based hiring, and having a kind of hard and fast rule kind of across a broad spectrum makes things a little bit easier, and I think also helps employers plan around that, right? Like it gives you some more incentives or reasons to plan around it. Where right now for us in the U.S., we don't necessarily have that because it may be appreciated or kind of observed, but there isn't a hard and fast rule that's the case.
Yeah.
But that is a great segment into mentorship here, because if I had a mentor, maybe I would know these things and I would figure it out, right? And they would just tell me along the way. So, let's dive into, what is, and I love level setting kind of definitions and expectations to define things. In your brain, what does, the role of the mentor play within somebody, and how would you go about finding that type of person to help with that?
So for me, the role of the mentor is about getting both a perspective and a level of experience that you don't have access to and getting it on the spot. You can't immediately suddenly have 15 years of experience at something, but what you can do is tap into somebody who does. And that is worth more than any paid package or videos you're going to watch or anything like that, to not only build that relationship with an individual, because when you get a mentoring relationship, you tend also to not look at it. It's not like a big sister, little brother type thing. It's also not like a boss employee type thing. You're looking at the individual on a level of respect that's the same. So the transparency is expected to be there, and you don't get that relationship anywhere else. Not even your besties can give you that, because as a general rule, your besties aren't typically in the role that you want to be in or in the area that you want to go to. So when it comes to being a mentor, and what you get out of it, that's it for me. And when it comes to finding kind of mentor programs and getting involved in it, there's tons of them all over the place. And I want to say it's important to know what it is that you want to get out of mentoring. But I would be the first to put my hands up and go, first time I ever sought a mentor, it was because I wanted to know what is it they do before I do it and find out if I'm useful to somebody. And I had no clue what I wanted to get out of it, none whatsoever. And I even said to him in the beginning, I was like, I don't really want to be wasting your time. Thank you for giving me the time to meet with me, but I'm not entirely sure what it is that I want. But through that initial conversation that I had with him, just about his background and his life, my background and my life, I discovered that there was a hell of a lot of questions I actually did want an answer to. And even if a lot of those questions were around mentoring to begin with, the rest of them actually ended up being around my career. And the first mentor that I had was the one that taught me, through his knowledge and his experience, to take the leap to move into leadership, which I have never regretted and couldn't see myself ever going back from. And I'm not entirely sure I would have taken that leap without that person there telling me why I should do it, basically.
That's a really great answer, and I like the approach and perspective you took towards that. So let's take that one step further, and let's define what you think a mentor is and what role they play in somebody else's career life.
Okay, so for me, I think a mentor is like I've just said it wasn't, but like a big sister or big brother. It's a really trusted individual that you'll take all of your career and personal growth, concerns, questions, fears to, and they'll be there to support you, to advise you, and to help guide you through it. They're not going to give you all the answers all the time, and that's a big thing in mentoring. It's not about me saying, yes, take this job, quit this service, fight this fight. It's about enabling people to discover what it is that they want and need for themselves, and supported them while they figure out how to do that. So for me, my mentor became very much a safe space where I was like, I really need to talk to somebody about a decision I have to make now, and I haven't a clue. My husband's no use to me. My siblings are no use to me, and my peers are no use to me because they're in that pot already. Who do I talk to? That's the person I was going to go to and talk to about it. So when I say big sister, big brother, I mean that trusted person that you would go to. And any mentor I think that you create a relationship with, that sticks with you. Like I'll never forget this guy helping me make that decision. It's been an impact on my life. And when I look back, I realized that I had mentors I didn't know were mentors before we really understood what mentoring is, who were massive. They changed the trajectory of my career massively without even realizing that they had done it. And all of them were men, for what it's worth as well. Just to throw that one out there, people often assume, especially when you're talking about women in cybersecurity, that will only go to women. There wasn't many of them at the time, but I went to men. Then I've had female ones since then, but yeah, they're the ones that changed that career trajectory for me.
Well, let's follow the same kind of protocol for mentee, right? And what role that person plays in that relationship, just for consistency. And then I promise the next question will make some sense in terms of because I think there's the individual aspect of that. And to your point, I've had a lot of relationships over the years of people I would turn to, right? That I don't know that I would necessarily call them a mentor in a very structured sense, but in terms of just bouncing ideas and things off of them, 100%. There's there. And I think, we'll dive into the formality aspect of that, how we would determine, after this follow-up question, but back to the original one before I squirrel too much. Mentee, what is the mentee and what role do they play in that relationship?
So the mentee is typically the one who is seeking the advice or seeking the help, or as I see it, is seeking the opportunity to grow more, both personally and professionally. So a mentee will typically come to you usually with something they want to work on, but sometimes they'll do it because they want to build relationships in the industry. They want to get to know more people, and they'll take a mentor in that sense. So yeah, the mentee has to come to that relationship open-minded and willing to either take the advice on board or have a good argument for not doing so, in order to get the best out of it. I've had some mentees over the years where we've definitely had that awkward moment where I'm like, do you think you can do that? And you can feel them going, oh, that's so uncomfortable. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. And I'm like, okay, but trust me, it's going to work out at the end of it, and they'll do what they were asked. I'm making this sound really sketchy. It's not at all. They'll do what they're asked.
I didn't take it that way. You're good. I didn't take it that way.
But, simple things. I've had a mentee before, one of the very first ones I ever had. And the first thing I suggested to him to do, he was very, very shy, wanted to be better known across the company that he was in, wanted to be better known for his skills because he's fantastic skills. But because he was so quiet, there's no brand, shall you say, that's shining out. And that was limited in his ability to grow professionally. So I said to him, let's start small. This was also during COVID, so we're all locked up at home, and it's even harder to make an impression on people. I said, let's start small. And if anybody asks you for anything or is asking generally for anything, be the person that says yes. And we did this for a couple of weeks. So let's say you're on a Zoom meet with all of your team and your boss says, okay, can somebody host a meeting next week? Or we're looking for somebody to present this idea. So you'd be the first one to stick your hand up in the air and say, yes, I'm going to do it, no matter how much it terrifies you. If somebody says, will you meet me for coffee? Barring the COVID bit to one side, say, yes, go ahead and meet them for coffee or online or whatever. I said, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel, let's do this for just 1 week. And I remember the face, the big wide eyes looking back at me, because such a shy person. It's like, just trust me and do it for 1 week. Like the example I have is that I had to hold myself to account and do the same thing for myself. And I've seen it work with people before. And I remember being contacted by a guy on LinkedIn who said, hey, I'm in Ireland with my daughter. She's coming to college, and thought maybe we'd meet up and have a coffee. Now, I had no idea who this person was. I just assumed it was somebody from work. And I often get asked about things to see and where to go, and sent a lot of information. And then he said, do you want to meet us for coffee in Waterford, which is a couple of counties away from me? And I said, yes, was going, I'm in me gym jams. I don't want to leave the house. But I did it. It was about an hour away. And my husband reminded me to hold myself accountable. Got in the car, went down and met him. Turned out that he was one of the founders of the OWASP Foundation, or that side of things. Yeah. And I have an open invite to go speak at any of his events over in San Francisco whenever I want. which just came out at the end of it. I was just going to meet somebody for coffee who was in Ireland, because I never actually looked at his profile until it was time to go meet him. I just needed to make sure that, it wasn't some mass murder. But simply saying yes to things, such as even meeting somebody for a coffee, you'll be surprised where it goes, and it builds your confidence as an individual, because you realize you're brave enough to say yes to that coffee. That in itself is enough to build confidence. So really long-winded way of saying that the mentee, if you trust your mentor, you have to feel connected to them. If you don't, you'll know from day one, and then walk away from it and find a different one. But if you trust your mentor and lean into these things, you'll be surprised what a massive difference it can make. And this particular guy that I was mentoring did, in fact, win an award and get promoted for the work that he's doing in the company that he's in as well. He did a fantastic job. And it was tiny, tiny changes that helped him to realize that he could do those things. And they're the kind of differences that you can make both as a mentee and as a mentor in those roles.
So you alluded to it a little bit, but maybe we take it one step further around. And a great answer. Just, what does the cadence or maybe the relationship structure, right, of that mentor-mentee look like to try to really make sure that, I think for me, that the relationship for the mentor-mentee is fair and equitable, right? And that it's a shared effort between the two, and the work and ownership doesn't fall on one person to drive it. But what is a good kind of cadence or structure of that mentor-mentee relationship that you've seen work?
So for me, I do sessions sort of once a month, give time for things to pass by. If somebody's going through a huge transition of change, I might do it once a week. But there's lots and lots of different programs, and they have lots and lots of different structures. So the first time I ever mentored, I did it through I actually did it through Tenable, but the first time I ever mentored outside of Tenable, I did it through Mentors, because they had a very specific structure. It ran over 4 weeks, once a week session, and I knew exactly what was expected to be discussed and what the outcome was meant to look like, so that I knew how this would work typically. And then you've got other ones like in WeSys, we do cohort mentorship. So you'll have a mentor with a group of mentees from all over the world that are together. And once you're given the group, you'll be given a structure of what you'd be expected to cover in that time, but you have the room to breathe and change it around as you see fit. That usually runs over a year, and it'll be once a month over the year. Now, I personally prefer the monthly meets with people and the one-on-ones with people. And I think that's where you see the most growth, because the first 1 or 2 sessions is usually people warming up to you and learning to trust you, which is something you have to build quickly if you're only talking to them once a week. But or once a month, I mean. But over the year, what I love is I get the opportunity to sit with somebody a year later and say, do you remember when we had our first meeting and we talked about X, Y, and Z, or you were afraid of this, or you were looking for this promotion or this increase or this job move or whichever it was that they wanted to do. And here we are a year later, and look at what's changed and look at the growth that you've had. So my personal preference is to do a year and do it once a month for a year, because there's plenty of meat on those bones then.
Have you found any tools or any automation or technology that helps facilitate some of these things? And I don't know that it exists, so you could say no, and I could very well answer it. Or maybe it's a Google Sheet or Google Doc, right? Because I know like in those conversations, there's goals and probably some priorities and homework and due dates, right? And everybody gets busy. And if you're managing 10, there's probably some level of like, man, I want to make sure I don't cross. Like, are you, I go back to, I used to watch, I'm sure everybody's watched the show Catfish. Where that guy had a spreadsheet of all of the people he had catfished over the years and kept tabs of all the things that he did, right? I don't think you're mentoring that many people, but in the light of trying to make light and have some fun in the podcast, right? Like, what advice and tools did you use to kind of help facilitate and manage those relationships, if any?
So I've used a couple of things that I would use personally is things like the Calendly app, if I've got a bunch of mentees on the go, so that they can schedule when works for them. I usually schedule it ahead, but I always say to people, if something comes up in between, don't wait till the monthly call. Let's have a chat about it when it's happening. And I'll use WhatsApp if there's anything that comes up urgently. I've often taken a call on WhatsApp from somebody who's like, the most recent one was somebody who was super excited because they were offered 2 jobs and they were trying to figure out which one should they take. It's a great position to be in. But on the other, it's pen and paper that for me, I was looking to one side because I have a list on the wall of pages where I had written down the name of each mentee as I went and the program that I met them through, and what the core thing that was that we were focusing on. I generally, in my meeting invites, I use like notes to remind me what we spoke about last and what we're speaking about again. Because at a time I did have 10 via the WESIS program, and I had others as well. Since 2019, I've had about 50 different mentees, and then I've done one-on-ones with people too, which is kind of like short burst sessions of mentoring, I guess. And I set myself a task to do 100 of them since September last year, and I finished that in June. But so keeping tabs of all those, that was funny. But I'm old school, pen and paper for me on that kind. But for the digital part, Calendly is really handy if you're stuck to schedule things. But almost every program that you get into, whether it's WESIS or whether it's Mentors or whether it's any of the other programs that are available, they'll typically give you tools to be able to manage those things within the program. If you're doing it independently, you need to figure out yourself how you do it. And most people that choose to do it independently are good at scheduling their own time, and they're at that stage of their life or their career, they're well used to having to manage chaos anyway.
So you just alluded to a couple organizations that help facilitate this. How, if I'm out here and I say I want to find a mentor, where would I go? And we'll do the flip of that. If I was a mentor and I wanted to find a mentee, where I know there are programs that are designed, but where could I go and find my person to help me?
So the key is to, when you're searching for a mentor-mentee program, is to search it, assuming it's in cybersecurity, you're going to search for that first. A lot of the ones I work with tend to be women specific, as in the mentees are women. I have done ones where they're not all women. It could be early careers, maybe, for people in cybersecurity, but the mentors might be female. So depending on what it is that you want to do, as a mentor, there's definitely more options. There's always room for people to become mentors. Have a look, Google the different programs. Like I say, WESIS has been running a mentoring program for years, and they're actually registering people for this year's one now. And Mentors I've worked with for years as well. They do it globally. So when I worked with Mentors, I worked with people across the world, and they have a heavy membership volume in Africa too, which just blew my mind. Culturally, the difference too, which definitely opened my mind to be a better leader when I was working with a global company then as well. So I think when you're looking for it, bear in mind what exactly it is that you are trying to get out of it. So if you're working in governance and cybersecurity, search for the best mentorships for governance. If you're looking for just career progression, early careers, search for those ones too. Most places will cater for all of them. Some will be better than others. I know in the UK, there's one, Reed Technology, which is like a recruitment agency, but I swear their mentorship program is probably bigger than the recruitment agency at this site. And they have both male and female mentees, and they focus entirely on the cybersecurity side of things as well. And they've got a lot of speakers. There's another one, Elevate Women in Tech, which is specifically for women too. I know a lot of the women ones. And then, basically they're all over the place, but can be very specific to the area of cyber that you want to go into. But try them all. What have you got to lose? They shouldn't cost you anything. People that are mentoring you don't charge you. So if somebody is telling you that it's going to cost you money to be mentored, then run as fast as your little legs can carry you. It should not cost you a penny. People are mentoring is something that you do because it's the right thing to do, frankly. And people generally, I mean, if they want to start charging you money for what you're doing, then is your I don't know, it's got a different name, but it's not mentoring, basically. Mentoring is
coach. To me, that's coaching, where you're a little more career coaching, where you would pay for that. Yeah. I mean, well, so you're teeing up question after question, by the way. So you've made this very easy just to ask questions. So you alluded to the idea around paid or not paid, which we're not going to dive into that just per se. But have you seen, or are there any kind of pitfalls that you've seen mentor-mentees kind of fall in that impact that relationship, or maybe some things to stay away from, right, within that relationship, or it could, I don't want to say cross a line, because that just seems, but pitfalls around mentor-mentee relationships you could find?
Well, the comfort has to be the number one. If you're not comfortable with the person that's going to mentor you, then you're not going to get out of it what you need to get out of it. You need to be able to trust them. And you can't trust somebody if you don't feel comfortable around them. I always like to do an intro call first. I usually pop on for half an hour, and we'll talk about the weather and kids and dogs and holidays or whatever, anything at all. We generally don't get right stuck into any of the serious stuff because I want to see, do I like them? Do they like me? And by like, I mean, can I see us moving towards a relationship where there's going to be that level of trust where I can help them and they want to be helped. And I have maybe twice come across where it wasn't happening. I always say to people at the end of the intro session, this is purely just to find out, do we gel? Like, if you don't feel that's the case, that is fine. I am not going to hold any grudges. I'll find someone else to mentor and you'll find someone else to be able to mentor you. But I'd rather that you're with somebody that you trust and can move a relationship forward with than try and force it with me. So that's a big one. If you don't feel comfortable with somebody from the off, then it's probably not going to be the way to go, unless there's some other goal that you have in that relationship. Then the other thing I would say is, obviously I've said, if anyone's trying to charge you money, then run away from that one, because that shouldn't be the case too. And then as a mentor, have boundaries. Like I often have, create great friendships out of mentoring relationships. And I've often kept relationships with mentees long beyond the programs have finished. Not necessarily regular meetings, but the bit I found very difficult in the beginning was to stop having those regular meetings if it wasn't part of a program that ended on a certain day. Or if it did end on a certain day where people would say, can we keep going? Can we keep having sessions? Because for me now, if I keep having sessions that somebody else I can't mentor, if I've put 6 months or a year or whatever it is into mentoring somebody, then I want to be able to give somebody else the opportunity to be mentored too. But I used to find it so hard to say no to people, so hard. So I had to learn how to do that as a mentor as well. So keep in touch. If there's something specific that you want to talk about, let's hop on and talk about it. But with regards to regular sessions, I want to be able to give someone else the opportunity that you've had. So yeah, protect yourself and your time. And as with anything, you don't ever have to physically meet a mentor. That's entirely up to you. You can do everything through remote these days and stick within your comfort zones there. Look after your safety. So.
Yeah, that relationship is so important. I mean, to me, it's such an important piece. And I think there has to be a value alignment and I think a good personality fit there in order for you. I know for me specifically, and I would assume for most, to have that level of trust and comfort, because you might share some really intimate things with somebody if, things get hard at work, or, how do you balance maybe you're struggling at home and you got to come talk, how do I deal with this in the workplace? I mean, there is some moments and have that foundational level of trust and confidence in a person, then it's probably doomed from the start.
Yes, and it's good to know as well that, because it will happen at some point, you'll get somebody who will. I want to say offload, but that sounds like it's a bad thing. That will share things with you that you're not qualified to deal with. Know what to do before you get into a relationship like that. When those things happen, know where to take it or where to guide people or where to direct them to, because that kind of stuff will come up from time to time. And it's not a counseling service. Some people will run it in a much more clinical way. You can still have a close relationship with somebody, but we're going to discuss this and we're going to do this and we're going to leave you with these tasks to go. I'm obviously, as I'm sure you can tell, a little bit more kind of relaxed about it. It's just how I go as such, but I'm not afraid of somebody telling me something that I can't deal with. That's why I think I'm okay with being relaxed about it. I know what to do with it. I know how to guide them and what direction to point them in and still support the relationship. But if you're not comfortable with that, this is where boundaries come in. Be clear in the beginning about, we stick only to the times that we're together. Maybe you don't want contact outside of that. Maybe you only do times on Saturdays because that's the day that works for you and you spend evenings doing things with your kids. Set all those boundaries, be clear as a mentor in the beginning how that works for you, and then your mentee will respect that. They're usually so happy to have somebody to have that relationship with and share the information with and grow with, that they'll absolutely work around your boundaries. You're not asking of anything unreasonable. You're actually teaching them how important boundaries are as well.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Well, 30 minutes went way faster as it always has a tendency to do. So everybody gets the same last question, but what advice would you give to somebody looking to level up their cybersecurity career?
I think, the obvious advice is to get a mentor, but outside of that, I would say do the YES program as such, the bit that I mentioned in the beginning. If you feel like your career isn't moving forward the way that you want to, you're not getting the recognition, you're not getting the opportunities, whether it's in your place of work or in the industry generally, start putting yourself slightly outside of that comfort zone by identifying those opportunities. I can guarantee you that every day that's going past, you're missing opportunities that you don't even realize are happening. But start listening for when people are looking for help, asking for opinions, asking for opportunities. It might be a case that they'll say, you know, oh, I've written this article or I've written this piece of code and, you know, I'm nervous to submit it. And you go, well, would you like me to help like read it through for you or see if I can offer any opinion? Anywhere like that where there's an opportunity to help somebody else or to do something slightly outside your comfort zone and more than you already do, take it and do that. And with that, you'll be surprised how many more skills you'll get, both soft skills and hard skills in the world of cyber, even if you limit your yeses to only people that are in the cyber industry. When you see how much growth you'll have, mark how you were in the beginning and look at it a month later, 6 months later, a year later. There will absolutely definitely be growth.
I really like that idea of just the investment in time that you alluded to, because it is, you know, I think it's such an important common denominator for both parties to really assess what that's going to be and make sure you get the most out of it and try to avoid any pitfalls, because we're only on this earth for a short period of time. Try to make the most and surround yourself with people you like and enjoy. And I know I can say I truly enjoyed today's conversation. Damn, the king of segues today. I'm liking it. Really enjoying the conversation today around, you know, just mentorship. And it is such an important aspect of the sector we're in. You know, even before we hopped on, we just talked about that idea of just camaraderie and teamwork, and what better way to do it than to find people who invest time and energy into you as a person, and vice versa. Yeah. So Jennifer, thank you so much for your time today, your wisdom. I feel like we could have went on probably another 30 so minutes around some mentorship stuff, but at the end of the day, I really appreciate the time and energy, not just from you, but also for those that take the time to listen to our show every single week. I love doing this, and it's been a lot of fun just to get to meet really cool people like yourself. So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks, Tony. It was fun.
And thanks everybody for tuning in. Until next week, we'll see you guys soon.